The wind howled like a banshee, whipping through the barren, snow-covered landscape. It was a relentless force, biting at exposed skin with icy teeth. Yet despite the biting cold, 4 friends pressed on, their breath forming frosty clouds in the air as they trudged up the treacherous slopes of the desolate mountain. Among them was Sarah, a spirited young woman with fiery red hair that peeked out from under her thick winter cap. Beside her was Mark, her childhood friend and the unofficial leader of their little expedition. Tall and sturdy, Mark had always been the adventurous type, and it was his idea to climb the remote peaks that loomed before them. Then there was Emily, quiet and introspective, her dark hair tucked into a knitted beanie. She had come along mostly because of Sarah's enthusiasm, though the closer they got to the summit, the more she regretted her decision. Finally, there was Jake, the joker of the group. His constant stream of jokes and quips helped to lighten the mood, but even his humor seemed to falter in the face of the mountain's ominous presence. They had set out early that morning, full of excitement and anticipation. The sun had been shining, the sky a brilliant blue, but now, as the afternoon waned, dark clouds rolled in, blotting out the sun and casting a shadow over the landscape. "I think we should turn back," Emily said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Mark glanced back at her, his brow furrowed with determination. "We've come too far to turn back now. We're almost at the summit." Sarah nodded in agreement, her cheeks flushed with exertion. "Emily, don't be such a worrywart. We'll be fine." Jake flashed a grin, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Besides, think of the stories we'll have to tell when we get back. Surviving a blizzard on Mount Everest, it's got bestseller written all over it." Emily forced a smile, though her heart was heavy with unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the mountain itself was alive with some malevolent presence. As they climbed higher, the wind grew stronger, threatening to knock them off their feet. The air grew colder, seeping through their layers of clothing and chilling them to the bone. Yet still they pressed on, driven by a mixture of stubbornness and a desire to conquer the mountain. It was late afternoon when they finally reached the summit. The world spread out before them in a vast frozen expanse. The view should have been breathtaking, but instead it filled them with a sense of dread. "We did it!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice echoing off the icy cliffs. Mark raised a triumphant fist in the air, a grin of pure exhilaration on his face. "We made it to the top." Jake let out a whoop of joy, though even he seemed to falter as he looked out at the desolate landscape. "Now all we have to do is get back down." As they began their descent, the temperature dropped even further, the wind picking up to a deafening roar. Snow whipped around them in blinding gusts, obscuring their vision and making it nearly impossible to find their way. "We need to find shelter," Emily shouted, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Mark nodded, his face set in a grim line. "There's a cave not far from here. We can hunker down there until the storm passes." They stumbled through the blinding snow, their hands numb with cold, their feet heavy with exhaustion. The cave loomed before them like a dark, gaping maw, offering a sliver of hope in the midst of the storm. Inside, the air was still and cold, the walls coated with a thick layer of frost. They huddled together for warmth, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "We'll wait it out," Mark said, his voice firm with resolve. "Once the storm passes, we can make our way back down." But as the hours dragged on, hope began to fade. The storm showed no signs of abating, the wind howling outside like a hungry beast. "We need to get out of here," Emily said, her voice trembling with fear. Sarah nodded, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. "We can't stay here forever. We'll freeze to death." Mark stood up, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the cave. "There's got to be another way out. We just have to find it." They searched the cave, their hands numb with cold, their breath coming out in ragged gasps. But no matter where they looked, they found no other exit. No way out of the icy tomb that had become their prison. Hours turned into days as they huddled together for warmth, their supplies dwindling with each passing hour. They tried to ration what little food they had, but hunger gnawed at their bellies like a ravenous beast. And all the while the mountain watched, silent and unyielding, its icy grip tightening around them with each passing moment. As the days stretched into weeks, their hope began to fade. They whispered to each other in hushed tones, their voices filled with despair. "We're going to die here," Emily said, her eyes wide with fear. Sarah shook her head, tears freezing on her cheeks. "No, we can't give up. We have to keep fighting." But even as she spoke the words, she knew they were empty. The mountain had claimed them, its icy embrace wrapping around them like a shroud. And then one by one they began to disappear. It started with Jake, his laughter echoing through the cave one moment, only to be silenced the next. They found no trace of him, no sign of where he had gone. Then it was Emily, her dark eyes wide with terror as she vanished into the shadows. Sarah was the last to go, her fiery red hair disappearing into the darkness as she reached out for Mark's hand. Alone in the cold, silent cave, Mark knew he was next. He could feel the mountain calling to him, its ancient voice whispering promises of release. And so, with a heavy heart and frozen limbs, he stepped out into the storm, disappearing into the blinding snow. No trace of the friends was ever found, their disappearance becoming just another legend of the mountain. A cautionary tale told to those foolish enough to brave its icy peaks. And the mountain watched on, its secrets buried beneath a blanket of snow, waiting for its next victims to claim.